This hearing is the third in the Oversight Committee's investigation into the federal government's response to the Chinese Communist Party's use of a strategy known as political warfare. The CCP employs this strategy to infiltrate and influence communities and critical sectors across the nation. The CCP's ultimate goal is to weaken and destroy its main enemy, which the party has identified as America. The committee has conducted oversight of 25 sectors of the federal government to understand if a whole-of-government approach to the CCP threat is sufficient or even in existence. Consulting with experts from the U.S. government, military, and private sector, and holding briefings with 23 federal agencies, the committee has found that the CCP is waging a war without weapons against America. And the Biden-Harris administration has no government-wide strategy to combat CCP warfare. By any reasonable analysis, the United States faces a new Cold War, but right now, only its opponent, the CCP, is committed to winning it. Unlike the first Cold War, the adversary is already within, having entrenched itself within U.S. borders, institutions, businesses, universities, and culture centers. By capturing the elites and influential circles. Simply put, too many federal agencies have failed to understand, acknowledge, and combat CCP's political warfare. Sometimes this is because the agencies themselves have succumbed to CCP influence operations seeking to reshape U.S. decision-making to the party's benefit.
You know, James Comer loves to come after people he disagrees with, in spite of it never working out for him. But now he's not only looking at the Chinese Communist Party, he's looking at Tim Walz.
It's troubling that you could potentially have a vice president of the United States who has such a fond place in his heart for the communist country that he should be actually very concerned about.
As you all know, China steals our intellectual property. They steal our patents. They fund disinformation campaigns. They try to divide our democratic government. They do everything they can to harm everyday Americans.
Comer is very concerned about Tim Walz's ties to China. When he graduated college, he went there to teach, and he's gone back several times. Now, this concerns Comer, who apparently thinks all there is to do in China is share USA political secrets. However, he didn't seem to mind, remember, when another politician cozied up to China.
He loves them because he envies their total control over their societies, and they love him because they know they can manipulate and control him. He praises all of them, Putin, Orban, Xi, Kim Jong-un. Trump exults in their friendship and emulates their control over what he calls their people. When he was president, Trump said that he and Xi, the president of China and chairman of the Communist Party, quote, love each other. And Trump called Xi a brilliant man. He openly envied and marveled over Xi's total control over his people, saying, quote, he controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. And when people ask questions about Xi and the CCP's role at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, Trump repeatedly defended Xi and praised his excellent leadership, calling him a brilliant man, smart, brilliant, everything perfect. We love each other. President Xi, who's a friend of mine, who's very smart, very good man, nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one.
You know, this feels like it's going outside of having good relationships with foreign nations and turning into something much more nefarious. I mean, isn't this something we should be more concerned about than Walz's trips to China?
All the dictators and despots of the world have something in common in 2024. They're united in trying to subvert democracy in America, and they're engaged indeed in political warfare against us, as the title of this hearing has it. The vicious autocrats of Russia, the police state theocrats of Iran, the totalitarian communist billionaire bureaucrats of China and North Korea, and all their corrupt oligarchs and plutocrats seek to destroy the very idea of human rights and political freedom that are the defining ideals of America and still the hope of a world struggling against their oppression. The tyrants have something else in common. Donald Trump. He loves them all, and they love him back. Trump's repeatedly praised Russia's lawless and bloody invasion of Ukraine as smart. At a Mar-a-Lago fundraiser in 2022, he gushed that Putin was taking over a country, a vast, vast location, a great piece of land with a lot of people, and just walking right in. At the presidential debate earlier this month, he refused to say that he wanted Ukraine to win the war, but said he would end the war in 24 hours, meaning he would, per usual, cave in to Putin's propaganda and outrageous demands and cede large parts of Ukraine to the Russian strongman who imprisons, poisons, and murders his political opponents. Trump's chief of staff, John Kelly, described his own boss as, quote, a person who admires autocrats and murderous dictators, a person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. And to quote Trump's chilling 2018 comments to Fox News about Kim Jong-un, Trump said, he's the head of a country, and I mean he's the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different. He speaks and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same. Trump openly catered to Putin, defended the former KGB chief, and aggressively took his side against the NSA, the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the FBI, and more than a dozen other U.S. intelligence agencies, which found that Putin was engaged in active political espionage, sabotage, and interference in the 2016 American presidential election, a form of shocking appeasement that just invited further Russian aggression against us in 2020 and now again in the 2024 campaign.
Certainly sounds more concerning to me. It truly sounds like James Comer has a single mission in all of his probes, and it is fear-mongering. It's making the American public feel distrust towards their leadership. It's something he likely learned from one Donald Trump, of course, whose main strategy this campaign has been Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris, and immigrants have ruined your life.
Americans have watched their communities destroyed by this sudden, suffocating inundation of illegal aliens. I said, if you let them in, it's going to be hell. They are vicious, violent criminals. These are stone-cold killers. They'll walk into your kitchen, they'll cut your throat. These are people at the highest level of killing. They'd cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next morning. These people are roaming our country.
You know, Trump's whole playbook is about fear, and it seems Comer has been taking notes. They feed their voter base fear and suspicion, focusing on China, immigrants, or really anything foreign that they can spin into a threat. It taps into the worst instincts of people: racism, xenophobia, and of course, fear of the unknown, all to keep them angry and voting. What we see here is a classic tactic from Comer. He's stirring up fear and distrust under the guise of patriotism. His focus on Walz's trips to China, well, it feels like a weak attempt to undermine a political opponent by playing into the xenophobic fears many still hold about China. But let's be real here. Walz's visits to China to teach and foster understanding, they're not the real threat to America. The real issue is politicians like Comer, who manipulate their base with misinformation and distractions. It's like a magic trick. Comer wants you to focus on one hand, but what's happening in the other? Fear-mongering about China and immigrants, well, it keeps his voters in a constant state of anxiety, which makes them easier to control and keeps them coming back for more.